The moment that destroyed my marriage wasn't finding suspicious text messages, wasn't discovering secret credit card charges, wasn't walking in on my husband with another woman. It was my 7-year-old son Lucas bouncing into our bedroom on a Saturday morning, pointing at his father's dress shirt draped over the chair, and announcing with the innocent curiosity that only children possess, "Daddy, there's lipstick on your shirt. But it's not Mommy's color because Mommy doesn't wear lipstick." The silence that followed his observation was deafening, broken only by my husband David's nervous laugh, and my own sharp intake of breath as I stared at the unmistakable red stain on the collar of his white business shirt, a stain that couldn't be explained, away as food or ink or any of the innocent mishaps that might mark a man's clothing during a normal workday. Lucas was right, of course, in that brutally honest way that children cut through adult deceptions without even realizing they're wielding truth like a sword. I hadn't worn lipstick in 15 years, hadn't owned makeup of any kind since our wedding day, had built my entire identity around natural beauty and authentic living that didn't require artificial enhancement or chemical masks. In that instant, watching my son's confusion as David stammered about client dinners and professional obligations, I realized that my husband hadn't just been unfaithful. He had been careless enough to bring evidence of his betrayal into our bedroom, into our son's innocent observations, turning a 7-year-old boy into an unwitting detective whose natural curiosity had just exposed the systematic destruction of everything we had built together. The lipstick stain Lucas had spotted wasn't a subtle trace that might be missed by casual observation. It was a bold, deliberate mark that suggested intimacy and passion, the kind of evidence that comes from close contact, rather than accidental brushing or professional interaction. The color was deep crimson, almost burgundy, applied with the confidence of someone who wore makeup as armor and seduction, who used cosmetics to create an image that was the polar opposite of my own philosophy of natural authenticity. The stain was positioned on the collar in a way that could only have resulted from direct contact with someone's mouth, from kisses or whispered words or the kind of intimate moments that should have been reserved for the wife who slept beside him every night, but who had apparently been replaced by someone whose beauty came from bottles and brushes rather than from the honest joy of living without artifice. What made Lucas's observation particularly devastating was the matter-of-fact way he delivered it, the complete absence of awareness that he was describing evidence of his father's betrayal, that his innocent comment about Mommy not wearing lipstick would shatter 15 years of trust and expose a secret that had been hiding in plain sight. He spoke with the natural curiosity of a child who notices everything but judges nothing, who observes adult behavior without the filters and assumptions that allow grown-ups to rationalize inconsistencies and ignore obvious contradictions. His honesty was so pure, his observation so accurate, that it cut through months or possibly years of carefully constructed lies, with the precision of a laser exposing the rot beneath a perfect surface. For 15 years I had built my life around being David's authentic partner and Lucas's devoted mother, around creating a family culture that valued honesty over appearance, substance over style, genuine connection over artificial enhancement. Our home was a sanctuary of natural living where we grew our own vegetables, made our own bread, chose wooden toys over plastic distractions, and embraced the kind of simple, honest lifestyle that seemed increasingly rare in a world obsessed with image and pretense. I had met David in graduate school, where we bonded over shared values about environmental sustainability and authentic living, where his appreciation for my natural beauty and rejection of conventional feminine artifice had made me feel valued for who I truly was, rather than what I could make myself appear to be. The marriage we had built was everything I had dreamed of during those early conversations about values and future plans, when we would discuss raising children who understood the difference between real and fake, who would grow up appreciating natural beauty and honest relationships rather than the manufactured perfection that dominated popular culture. David had always claimed to prefer my makeup-free face to the painted masks worn by other women, had said that my natural beauty was more appealing than any artificial enhancement, had made me feel that my choice to live without cosmetics was not just acceptable, but actually superior to the vanity and insecurity that drove other women to hide behind chemical facades. Our family life reflected these shared values in ways that had made me proud of the authentic environment we were creating for Lucas. The honest foundation we were providing for his understanding of beauty and truth and genuine human connection. We ate meals prepared from ingredients we could pronounce, wore clothes made from natural fibers, chose furniture crafted from real wood rather than synthetic substitutes, and created traditions that honored the rhythms of nature and the cycles of honest living. David's career in environmental consulting seemed perfectly aligned with our values, providing financial stability while serving causes that mattered to our shared vision of sustainable, authentic living. But Lucas's innocent observation forced me to confront the possibility that while I had been living authentically, David had been constructing an elaborate performance. That while I had been embracing natural beauty and honest relationships, he had been drawn to someone whose very existence contradicted everything we claimed to believe together. The lipstick stain wasn't just evidence of infidelity. It was evidence that David had been lying about his preferences and values, that his appreciation for my natural beauty had been conditional or temporary, that his commitment to authentic living had been surface deep at best and completely fabricated at worst. The investigation that followed Lucas's innocent revelation became the most systematic detective work I had ever undertaken, driven by the need to understand not just whether David was having an affair, but how long it had been happening, how extensively our shared values had been compromised, how many of our family traditions and principles had been serving as camouflage for his systematic betrayal of everything we claimed to represent together. The evidence was everywhere once I knew what to look for. Cologne that I had never purchased lingering on his clothes, restaurant charges for establishments that specialized in the kind of artificial atmosphere we had always claimed to despise, receipts for gifts that had never appeared in our home, but that suggested someone was receiving the kind of material tokens that our family philosophy explicitly rejected. But the most damning evidence was discovering that David's affair partner was everything I was not. A woman who wore makeup like war paint, who dressed in synthetic fabrics and artificial colors, who worked in fashion marketing and represented everything our family had supposedly rejected in favor of natural authenticity. Her social media presence was a monument to artificial enhancement and manufactured beauty, a celebration of exactly the kind of superficial vanity that David had always claimed to find repellent when he compared other women unfavorably to my natural approach to life and relationships. The contradiction was so stark, so complete, that it forced me to question whether David had ever really shared our family's values or whether he had simply been using them as a convenient way to control and isolate me while secretly craving the kind of artificial excitement that I could never provide. The timeline of David's relationship with this woman coincided perfectly with changes in his behavior that I had attributed to work stress or midlife adjustment. Changes that now seemed calculated to create distance between us, while he explored a completely different kind of relationship with someone whose very existence contradicted our family's core principles. The increased attention to his appearance that I had dismissed as professional development, the new interest in restaurants and entertainment venues that contradicted our previous preferences, the subtle but persistent criticism of my natural approach to beauty and lifestyle. All of these changes made perfect sense once I understood that he had been comparing me to someone whose entire identity was built on the kind of artificial enhancement that our marriage had supposedly transcended. Before I tell you how I used Lucas's innocent observation to expose David's systematic betrayal and protect our family's authentic values, I need to ask you something that has haunted me since that Saturday morning in our bedroom. Have you ever discovered that your child's natural honesty had exposed adult deceptions you never suspected? that their innocent observations had revealed contradictions between what someone claimed to value and what they actually pursued in secret. Have you ever realized that while you were living according to shared principles and values, someone else was using those very principles as a way to control and limit you while they secretly pursued everything you had mutually rejected? If you've ever felt like you were the only person in your relationship actually committed to the values you claimed to share, if you've ever wondered whether your authenticity was being exploited by someone whose true preferences were the opposite of what they claimed, subscribe to this channel now. Because what I discovered after Lucas's casual observation about lipstick that wasn't mine isn't just about infidelity. It's about how people can use shared values as weapons of manipulation. How authenticity can become a prison when only one person is actually committed to living honestly. The investigation that followed my son's innocent comment will change how you think about natural beauty, about shared values, about the difference between people who live their principles and people who use principles to control others. The conversation I had with Lucas about the lipstick he had spotted was one of the most delicate interrogations I've ever conducted, requiring me to extract information without alarming him or making him feel responsible for adult problems that were completely beyond his understanding or control. I approached it casually over several days, asking seemingly innocent questions about what he had noticed about Daddy's clothes and whether he had seen anything else that seemed different or unusual. His responses painted a picture that was both heartbreaking and illuminating. He had noticed not just the lipstick, but also the strange smells on David's clothes, the new cologne that was different from what Daddy usually wore, the way his shirts sometimes had makeup stains that were different colors than anything in our house. What emerged from these gentle conversations was that Lucas had been unconsciously cataloging evidence of his father's affair for months, storing up observations about adult behavior that didn't match the family patterns he had learned to expect, but that he had no context for understanding or interpreting. He had noticed that Daddy sometimes came home smelling like the ladies at the store who wear lots of perfume, that his clothes sometimes had girl colors on them that weren't from anything in our house, that he had started looking in the mirror more and asking questions about his appearance that seemed different from his usual habits and concerns. But the most revealing detail Lucas shared was his confusion about why Daddy would have makeup on his clothes when our family didn't believe in makeup. When we had always talked about how natural beauty was better than fake beauty, when Mommy had taught him that real beauty came from being healthy and happy rather than from painting your face with chemicals. His innocent question. Why would Daddy have fake lady colors on him when we think real is better? Cut to the heart of the hypocrisy that David had been living, the contradiction between our family's stated values and his secret behavior that betrayed everything we claimed to believe together. The private investigator I hired to document David's activities provided professional confirmation of what Lucas's observations and my own detective work had already revealed, but also uncovered layers of deception that painted an even more comprehensive picture of his systematic betrayal. The woman's name was Vivian, and she was everything our family philosophy explicitly rejected. A marketing executive who specialized in beauty products, whose entire career was built around convincing women that their natural appearance was inadequate and required chemical enhancement to achieve social acceptability and romantic success. The surveillance photos showed David and Vivian together in expensive restaurants that specialized in exactly the kind of artificial atmosphere our family had always avoided. Surrounded by synthetic decor and artificial lighting, consuming food that had been processed and enhanced beyond recognition of its natural origins. The contrast with our home life was stark and deliberate. While I was preparing organic meals in our wooden kitchen and teaching Lucas about the value of natural ingredients and honest flavors, David was sharing chemically enhanced cuisine with a woman whose entire identity was built on the premise that natural wasn't good enough. But the most damaging evidence was discovering that David had been systematically lying, not just about his whereabouts, but about his fundamental beliefs and values. That his appreciation for our family's natural lifestyle had been either completely fabricated or had been replaced by attraction to everything we had supposedly rejected together. Text messages between him and Vivian revealed conversations that mocked our family's values, that described our natural lifestyle as boring and limiting, that expressed excitement about exploring a more sophisticated way of living that embraced rather than rejected artificial enhancement and material luxury. My sister Rachel, who had always been my closest confidant and most trusted advisor, was horrified not just by David's infidelity, but by the systematic nature of his betrayal of our family's core values and the way he had been using our shared principles as a form of control while secretly pursuing everything we had mutually rejected. Her response was immediate and protective. "He hasn't just been cheating on you. He's been lying about who he is and what he believes, using your authenticity as a way to limit your choices while he explores options that contradict everything your marriage is supposed to represent." Rachel's background in psychology provided insights into the particular cruelty of David's deception, the way he had been using our shared values as a form of manipulation and control, while secretly pursuing relationships and experiences that violated those values completely. She explained that people who use shared principles as weapons often do so because they want to limit their partner's options and competition, while maintaining maximum freedom for themselves. That David's encouragement of my natural approach to beauty might have been less about genuine appreciation and more about ensuring that I remained less conventionally attractive than the women he was secretly pursuing. The strategy Rachel helped me develop was designed not just to expose David's infidelity, but to reveal the systematic nature of his deception about values and beliefs, to demonstrate that his betrayal went far beyond simple adultery to include fundamental dishonesty about who he was and what our marriage actually meant to him. We decided to document not just his affair, but the complete contradiction between his public persona as a man who valued authenticity and his private pursuit of everything artificial and enhanced that our family had supposedly transcended together. The confrontation with David became inevitable when Lucas innocently asked why. Daddy's new friend smelled like the perfume ladies at the mall, when our family believed that natural smells were better than chemical smells. Whether there had been some mistake about our family's values, or whether different rules applied to different people. The casual way Lucas mentioned this logical confusion, his attempt to reconcile David's behavior with the principles he had been taught, forced me to realize that our 7-year-old was struggling to make sense of adult hypocrisy, that he was working to understand why the values that governed his own choices didn't seem to apply to his father's behavior. The confrontation took place on a Tuesday evening after Lucas was asleep, when David returned from what he claimed was a client meeting about sustainable packaging, but which I now knew had been another dinner with Vivian at an upscale restaurant that specialized in the kind of artificial luxury our family supposedly despised. I presented him with the evidence I had gathered: the lipstick-stained shirt that had started this investigation, surveillance photos of his dates with Vivian, financial records showing his systematic violation of our shared values through expensive purchases that contradicted everything we claimed to believe, and asked him simply, "Whose lipstick is on your shirt, and why are you pursuing someone who represents everything our family rejects?" The transformation on David's face was immediate and complete. The casual confidence of someone who believed his deception was perfect, replaced by the trapped panic of someone who realized that months of careful lies had been exposed by his own child's innocent observation, and his mother's determination to understand the truth. His first response was predictable: denial, followed by minimization, followed by attempts to reframe his betrayal as somehow serving our family's interests or responding to problems in our marriage that I had supposedly created or failed to address adequately. But when the evidence became impossible to dismiss, David's defense revealed the true depth of his deception and manipulation. He claimed that he had never really shared our family's values, that his appreciation for natural beauty and authentic living had been performance designed to win my affection during our courtship, but had never reflected his genuine preferences or desires. I tried to be the kind of man you wanted me to be, but I never really understood why anyone would choose natural when enhanced is available, why anyone would settle for basic when glamorous is possible. The casual cruelty of this revelation, that our entire marriage had been built on lies about fundamental beliefs and values, that David had been pretending to share principles that actually repelled him, that he had been using my authenticity as a form of control while secretly pursuing everything I had been conditioned to avoid, was breathtaking in its comprehensiveness. He hadn't just betrayed our marriage vows. He had betrayed the entire foundation of our relationship, the shared vision that had made our partnership possible, the mutual commitment to values that had shaped every decision we had made together for 15 years. His explanation for the affair was even more devastating. Vivian represented everything he had supposedly given up to marry me, everything he claimed our family values had prevented him from enjoying, everything he felt he deserved to experience despite the commitments he had made and the family he had helped create. She was glamorous where I was natural, enhanced where I was authentic, sophisticated where I was simple, artificial where I was genuine. His relationship with her wasn't just about romantic excitement. It was about rejecting every principle our family had embraced, every value our marriage had represented, every choice we had made together in favor of authenticity over artifice. The most chilling aspect of David's confession was his assumption that now that I knew the truth about his real preferences and values, we could somehow negotiate a new arrangement that would allow him to pursue his relationship with Vivian while maintaining some version of our family structure that acknowledged his need for the kind of artificial enhancement and material luxury that our marriage had supposedly transcended. He spoke as if his fundamental dishonesty about who he was and what he believed was a minor issue that could be resolved through better communication and more flexible boundaries rather than the comprehensive betrayal of everything our relationship had been built upon. The legal proceedings that followed David's exposure were particularly satisfying because they revealed the extent to which his systematic deception had violated not just our marriage vows but our financial agreements and parenting commitments. The money he had been spending on expensive dinners with Vivian, on gifts that celebrated everything our family rejected, on experiences that contradicted our shared values, represented a systematic violation of our mutual commitment to simple living and environmental responsibility. Family court judges are accustomed to cases of adultery, but less familiar with systematic deception about fundamental values and beliefs that undermines the entire basis for marital partnership. The custody arrangement that emerged from our divorce reflected the court's understanding that David had proven himself capable of systematic deception about core beliefs and values, that his willingness to lie about fundamental aspects of his identity raised questions about his judgment and reliability as a parent. The judge was particularly concerned about the impact on Lucas of discovering that his father had been living according to principles that contradicted everything the family claimed to represent, that David's hypocrisy might confuse or damage a child who was still learning about honesty, authenticity, and the importance of living according to your stated beliefs and values. But the most satisfying outcome wasn't the legal resolution. It was watching David realize that his plan to transition from our authentic lifestyle to a more sophisticated relationship with Vivian had been completely derailed by his own carelessness and his son's innocent honesty. Vivian, who had believed she was winning a man away from a boring, limiting marriage, was horrified to discover that her relationship with David had been exposed through a 7-year-old's observation about lipstick, that their secret romance had been revealed not through dramatic confrontation, but through a child's natural curiosity and honest reporting. The revelation that David had been so careless about concealing evidence of their relationship that his own son had noticed and commented on the physical traces of their intimacy was more than Vivian's self-respect could tolerate. Her decision to end their relationship left David facing the consequences of his choices alone. Without the family whose values he had rejected, or the mistress whose artificial beauty he had prioritized over his authentic commitments, without the natural lifestyle he had abandoned, or the enhanced existence he had sacrificed everything to pursue. At this point in my story, I need to pause and ask you something that still shapes my understanding of authenticity and shared values in relationships. If you discovered that your partner had been systematically lying about their fundamental beliefs and values, using shared principles as a form of control while secretly pursuing everything you had mutually rejected, what would you do? Would you try to renegotiate the relationship based on their real preferences, accepting that your entire partnership had been built on deception about core beliefs? Would you focus on protecting your child from the confusion and damage of discovering that parental hypocrisy had been masquerading as family values? Would you seek consequences that match the scope of the systematic deception? Or would you try to rebuild on a foundation of newly revealed truth about who your partner really was? Tell me in the comments what you think you would choose, because the decisions I made about handling David's comprehensive betrayal affected not just my own recovery, but Lucas's understanding of what it means to live authentically. What happens when adults lie about their most basic beliefs and values? What it costs a family when shared principles become tools of manipulation rather than genuine guides for living? The strategy I developed for rebuilding our lives after David's betrayal was focused on helping Lucas understand that his innocent honesty had protected our family from someone who had been systematically lying about his beliefs and values, that his observation about the lipstick had revealed not just infidelity, but fundamental deception about who his father really was and what their family actually represented. The goal was to help Lucas process the changes in our family structure, without doubting the value of honesty and authenticity, without learning that shared principles couldn't be trusted, without concluding that natural beauty and genuine living were somehow inferior to artificial enhancement and manufactured sophistication. The therapy sessions that became part of Lucas's routine were designed to help him understand that adults who lie about their fundamental beliefs are betraying not just their partners, but the children who learn from their example, that his father's deception about values was a choice that reflected David's character, rather than any problem with authenticity or natural living. The psychologist we worked with specialized in helping children whose parents had been living double lives, teaching Lucas that his father's lies about what he believed didn't mean that honesty and authenticity were wrong, but rather that some people aren't brave enough or committed enough to live according to the principles they claim to embrace. But the most important healing came from the conversations Lucas and I had about the difference between people who genuinely share your values and people who use shared values as tools for control and manipulation. Between authentic partnerships built on mutual commitment to principles and relationships where one person is performing beliefs they don't actually hold. Lucas learned that real love doesn't require anyone to pretend to be someone they're not. But it also doesn't allow people to lie about who they are while using false shared values to limit their partner's choices and freedom. The transformation in Lucas following our family's restructuring was profound and inspiring, reflecting the relief that comes from living in an environment where stated values actually match lived behavior, where authenticity is genuine rather than performed, where natural beauty and honest living are celebrated as choices, rather than imposed as limitations. The confusion he had been carrying about his father's contradictory behavior, the disconnect between family principles and David's increasing interest in artificial enhancement and material luxury disappeared once he no longer had to navigate the cognitive dissonance between what he was taught and what he observed. The new traditions Lucas and I created together were built on foundations of genuine authenticity rather than performed natural living, on shared values that were actually shared rather than imposed, on honest communication about beauty and lifestyle choices that honored both our principles and our freedom to make individual decisions within those principles. Our home became an even more authentic sanctuary, not because we were rejecting all artificial enhancement, but because we were choosing natural approaches based on genuine preference rather than rigid ideology or fear of judgment. The community of support that formed around Lucas and me once the truth about David's systematic deception became known was both validating and educational, connecting us with other families who had discovered that shared values could be weaponized by people who didn't actually share them. We met other women who had been manipulated through artificial limitations disguised as mutual principles, other children who had been confused by parental hypocrisy that masqueraded as family values, other families who had learned to distinguish between genuine authenticity and performed lifestyle choices. The professional success I achieved after freeing myself from a marriage built on fundamental lies about values and beliefs was remarkable in ways that surprised everyone who knew me, including myself. Without the constant cognitive dissonance of living with someone whose stated preferences contradicted their secret behavior, whose commitment to our shared principles was performed rather than genuine, I discovered energy and creativity that I hadn't possessed for years. The clarity that came from no longer having to reconcile contradictory evidence about someone's character allowed me to focus on building a career that truly reflected my authentic values, rather than simply reacting to someone else's hidden agenda. The advocacy work I began, focusing on helping people distinguish between genuine shared values and manipulative performance of principles, became a passion that gave meaning to the trauma Lucas and I had experienced. Our story became part of a larger conversation about authenticity versus performance, about how shared values can be used as tools of control rather than guides for mutual growth, about the importance of ensuring that family principles are genuinely shared rather than imposed by one person who doesn't actually live according to them. The writing I began about authenticity and relationships gave me a platform to reach people who might be living with partners whose commitment to shared values was more performance than reality, whose natural choices might be limited by people who were secretly pursuing artificial alternatives. The response from readers was consistently gratitude for permission to question whether their partners truly shared their values or were simply using those values as a form of control. Validation that their instincts about inconsistencies in behavior versus stated beliefs were legitimate and worth investigating. 2 years after Lucas's innocent observation about lipstick that wasn't mine destroyed our understanding of our family but ultimately saved us from continued deception about fundamental values, I can say with certainty that children often see through adult performances with a clarity that reveals truth more effectively than any investigation. His casual comment about the lipstick not being mommy's color because mommy doesn't wear lipstick opened a door to understanding that David had been systematically lying not just about his behavior but about his beliefs, not just about his activities but about his identity. Lucas, now 9 years old and thriving in an environment where authenticity is genuine rather than performed, has internalized lessons about honesty and values that will protect him throughout his life. He knows that real shared values mean everyone actually lives according to the same principles, that authentic beauty comes from choices that reflect genuine preferences rather than imposed limitations, that people who truly love you will never use shared beliefs as weapons to control your choices or limit your freedom to be fully yourself. The relationship Lucas has with his father now is limited and carefully structured to protect him from further confusion about values and authenticity while acknowledging the biological reality of their connection. David's attempts to rebuild trust with Lucas have been complicated by his inability to explain why he had been lying about his beliefs and values for so many years, why the principles that governed Lucas's upbringing hadn't applied to his own secret behavior, why authenticity had been good enough for his family, but not for his personal relationships. The most meaningful validation came from other children who had been raised according to family values that turned out to be imposed by parents who didn't actually live according to those same principles. Through support groups and family therapy, Lucas met other kids who had been confused by parental hypocrisy disguised as family principles, who had struggled to understand why family values applied to some people but not others, who had learned to distinguish between genuine authenticity and performed lifestyle choices that served hidden agendas. The lipstick stain that Lucas had spotted on David's shirt became, in our family narrative, a symbol of how truth reveals itself through the smallest details, how children's innocent observations can expose adult deceptions that are hiding in plain sight, how authenticity can be distinguished from performance through evidence that people who are lying about their values can't completely conceal. That red stain wasn't just proof of an affair. It was proof that David had been lying about his fundamental preferences and beliefs, that his commitment to our shared values had been performance designed to control, rather than authentic commitment designed to build something genuine together. The contrast between the artificial red lipstick and my natural approach to beauty became a metaphor for the choice between authentic and performed living, between relationships built on genuine shared values and relationships where one person uses principles as tools for manipulation and control. The woman who left that lipstick stain represented everything our family had supposedly rejected, but she also represented everything David had actually wanted, while using our values to prevent me from becoming the kind of woman who might compete with his secret preferences. The most profound lesson from this experience isn't about makeup or natural beauty or even family values. It's about the importance of ensuring that shared principles are genuinely shared rather than imposed, that authentic living is chosen rather than performed, that partnerships are built on truth about fundamental beliefs rather than strategic deception about core values. Children see through adult performances with remarkable clarity, and their innocent observations often reveal truths that adults have been trained to ignore or rationalize. In mine. If you've ever wondered whether your partner truly shares your values or uses those values to control your choices, if your child has ever made innocent observations that revealed inconsistencies between what someone claims to believe and how they actually behave, I want you to know that authenticity can't be performed indefinitely, that genuine shared values require both people to actually live according to the same principles, that children's honest observations often provide the most reliable evidence about adult character and commitment. The subscribers to this channel understand that family values are only meaningful when they're genuinely shared rather than imposed, that natural beauty and authentic living are choices that should enhance rather than limit your options, that relationships built on performed principles rather than genuine beliefs are ultimately unsustainable and destructive. If Lucas's story gives you permission to question whether your shared values are actually shared, to investigate inconsistencies between stated beliefs and observed behavior, to recognize that authentic partnerships require honesty about fundamental preferences rather than performance of imposed principles, then please subscribe and share your own experiences in the comments. The healing that's possible after discovering that your partner has been systematically lying about their core beliefs and values is profound and liberating, but it requires choosing authentic relationships over convenient performances, genuine partnerships over manipulative control, truth about fundamental compatibility over comfortable illusions about shared principles. Your children are watching to see whether the values you teach actually guide the choices you make, whether authenticity is something you live or something you perform, whether shared beliefs create freedom or impose limitations. The lipstick stain that started this journey represents, for our family, the moment when truth broke through performance, when a child's innocent honesty exposed adult deception that had been masquerading as shared values and authentic living. But it also represents the beginning of something better, genuine authenticity rather than performed natural living, real shared values rather than imposed limitations, honest partnerships rather than manipulative control disguised as mutual commitment to principles. The financial independence and emotional strength I've achieved since David's exposure have been built on foundations of genuine authenticity rather than performed principles, on relationships that honor both shared values and individual freedom, on partnerships where natural beauty and honest living are celebrated as choices rather than imposed as limitations. I no longer accept explanations that require me to doubt my own perceptions. No longer participate in relationships where stated beliefs don't match lived behavior. No longer allow shared values to be used as tools for control rather than guides for mutual growth and respect. Lucas, now thriving in an environment where authenticity is lived rather than performed, where values are genuinely shared rather than strategically imposed, has developed the kind of confidence and emotional intelligence that comes from seeing adults live according to the principles they teach, rather than using those principles to manipulate and control others. He's learned that real beauty comes from genuine choice rather than imposed limitation, that authentic relationships honor both shared values and individual freedom, that people who truly love you will never use beliefs as weapons to control your behavior or limit your options. The advocacy work that grew from our experience focuses on helping families distinguish between genuine shared values and manipulative performance of principles, on teaching people to recognize when family values are being used as tools for control rather than guides for authentic living, on supporting children who have been confused by parental hypocrisy disguised as family commitment to important principles. The response from families has been overwhelming gratitude for permission to question whether their shared values are actually shared, whether their authenticity is genuine or performed, whether their natural choices enhance their lives or limit their freedom. The educational programs I developed teach parents that children are naturally skilled at detecting inconsistencies between stated beliefs and actual behavior, that their innocent observations often reveal adult deceptions that are hiding behind performances of shared values, that protecting children sometimes means ensuring that family principles are lived rather than imposed, chosen rather than manipulated. The workshops emphasize that authentic family values create freedom within agreed-upon boundaries, rather than limitations disguised as mutual commitment to important principles. 3 years after Lucas's casual observation about lipstick that wasn't mine exposed David's systematic deception about fundamental values and beliefs, I can say with certainty that children often see through adult performances with a clarity that cuts directly to the truth, that innocence can expose lies that sophisticated adults have learned to ignore or rationalize, that authentic living requires genuine commitment from all participants rather than performance by some and manipulation by others. The red lipstick stain that Lucas noticed on his father's shirt wasn't just evidence of an affair. It was evidence that David had been lying about his core beliefs and values, that his appreciation for natural beauty and authentic living had been performance designed to control rather than genuine preference designed to create mutual growth and happiness. The woman who left that stain represented everything our family had supposedly rejected together, but she also represented everything David had actually wanted while using our shared principles to prevent me from becoming someone who might threaten his control or challenge his manipulation. The most unexpected gift of this entire ordeal was discovering that my commitment to authenticity and natural living hadn't been limiting or naive. It had been genuine and valuable, worthy of protection from people who would use it as a tool for control rather than celebration, as a choice that enhanced rather than diminished my life and relationships. Lucas's innocent observation didn't just expose his father's deception. It validated the authenticity we had been living, confirmed that our values were worth defending from people who would perform rather than embrace them. The therapy and support that helped Lucas process his role in exposing his father's systematic lies about values emphasized that his honesty had been brave and important, that children who notice inconsistencies between adult words and actions are protecting their families rather than causing problems, that authentic relationships require people to live according to the principles they claim, rather than perform beliefs they don't actually hold. This lesson will serve him well throughout his life, helping him recognize when people's actions contradict their stated values, when shared principles are genuine versus manipulative, when authenticity is lived versus performed. The legal reforms that resulted from our advocacy work focus specifically on recognizing that systematic deception about fundamental values constitutes a form of emotional abuse, that using shared principles as tools for control rather than guides for mutual growth damages children's understanding of authentic relationships, that family courts should consider not just infidelity, but comprehensive dishonesty about core beliefs when making custody and support decisions. Several states have introduced legislation that recognizes value-based deception as a factor in determining parental fitness and relationship stability. The natural beauty movement that I became involved with emphasizes that authentic living should enhance rather than limit people's choices, that shared values should create freedom within agreed-upon boundaries, rather than control disguised as mutual commitment to important principles, that relationships built on genuine shared beliefs are stronger than relationships where one person performs values they don't actually embrace while using those values to control their partner's behavior and choices. The writing I continued about authenticity in relationships became a platform for reaching people who might be living with partners whose commitment to shared values was more about control than genuine belief, whose natural choices might be limited by people who were secretly pursuing artificial alternatives while using family principles to prevent their partners from exploring similar options. Whether their authentic choices were honored or manipulated, whether their natural beauty was celebrated or used as a tool for limiting their attractiveness and options. The most profound transformation wasn't in my appearance or lifestyle. It was in my relationship with authenticity itself. My understanding that genuine natural living and honest values create freedom rather than limitation. That authentic beauty comes from choice rather than imposition. That shared principles should enhance relationships rather than serve as tools for one person to control another. I learned to distinguish between people who genuinely shared my values and people who performed those values while secretly pursuing everything they claimed we had rejected together. The community of women who formed around our shared experiences of value-based manipulation became a source of ongoing strength and practical wisdom, connecting me with others who had discovered that their commitment to authenticity had been exploited by partners who used shared principles as weapons, rather than celebrating them as choices that created mutual growth and happiness. We supported each other in rebuilding relationships based on genuine rather than performed values, on authentic rather than manipulative shared beliefs. The professional success I achieved in developing programs for authentic family living was built on foundations of genuine rather than performed commitment to natural beauty and honest relationships, on understanding that shared values should create possibilities rather than limitations, that authentic partnerships honor both mutual beliefs and individual freedom within those beliefs. The work was fulfilling in ways that my previous life had never been, because it was built on truth rather than performance, on genuine shared commitment rather than manipulative control disguised as mutual values. Lucas's development into a confident, authentic young person who understands the difference between genuine shared values and manipulative performance of principles has been the most rewarding outcome of our journey through his father's systematic deception. He knows that real authenticity comes from choice rather than imposition, that natural beauty should enhance rather than limit people's options, that honest relationships require everyone to live according to the principles they claim, rather than perform beliefs that serve hidden agendas. The relationship education programs we develop together focus on teaching children to recognize when adults' actions match their stated values versus when those values are being performed for manipulation or control. Lucas has become an advocate for authentic family living, sharing his story with other children who have been confused by parental hypocrisy, disguised as commitment to important principles, helping them understand that their honest observations about adult inconsistencies are valuable rather than disruptive. The lipstick stain that changed our lives has become a symbol in our family narrative of how truth reveals itself through the smallest details, how children's innocent honesty can expose adult deceptions that are hiding behind performances of shared values, how authentic living requires genuine commitment rather than strategic manipulation, disguised as mutual belief in important principles. That red stain wasn't just proof of infidelity. It was proof that authenticity can't be performed indefinitely, that genuine values eventually expose fake ones, that children's observations often provide the most reliable evidence about adult character. The natural beauty philosophy that emerged from our experience emphasizes that authentic choices should enhance rather than limit people's lives, that shared values should create freedom within agreed-upon boundaries, rather than control disguised as mutual commitment. The genuine partnerships honor both shared beliefs and individual expression within those beliefs. The approach we developed helps families distinguish between authentic shared values and manipulative performance of principles, between natural choices that come from preference and natural limitations that come from control. If you want more stories about children's observations revealing adult deceptions about fundamental values, about protecting families from manipulation disguised as shared principles, about transforming value-based betrayal into authentic empowerment and genuine shared commitment, subscribe now and join a community of people who believe that authenticity should enhance rather than limit relationships, that natural beauty comes from choice rather than imposition, that shared values should create possibilities rather than control disguised as mutual belief. Your story matters. Your child's observations about adult consistency are valid. And your journey toward authentic relationships, however difficult, is worth taking. Because somewhere, another child is noticing inconsistencies between what adults claim to believe and how they actually behave. And their parent needs to know that children's honest observations often reveal the most important truths about character and values, that lipstick stains can expose stains on integrity and authenticity, and that genuine shared values create freedom rather than the limitations that come from manipulation, disguised as mutual commitment to important principles. The red lipstick that Lucas noticed on his father's shirt will always represent, in our family story, the moment when truth broke through performance, when a child's innocent honesty exposed years of systematic deception about fundamental values and beliefs, when authenticity finally triumphed over manipulation, disguised as shared commitment to natural living and honest relationships. Sometimes the smallest evidence reveals the largest deceptions, and sometimes the most innocent observations provide the keys to freedom from relationships built on lies about who people really are and what they actually believe. My son saw lipstick on his father's shirt and cried that it wasn't mine, because he knew I didn't wear any. But what he really saw was evidence that his father had been lying about his fundamental values and preferences, that the shared principles that governed our family's choices didn't actually govern his father's secret behavior, that authenticity had been genuine for some of us and performance for others. The lipstick wasn't just from another woman. It was from a woman who represented everything our family had supposedly rejected, everything David had claimed to find less appealing than natural beauty, everything he had used our shared values to prevent me from becoming while he secretly pursued exactly those artificial enhancements and manufactured attractions that our marriage had supposedly transcended together.